when a bank man refused to meet with this black man. Then, in rage, he swears to buy the whole building and bank one day. Will he succeed? Let's figure it out. The movie begins in 1939. We see a teenage boy named Bernard, polishing shoes, outside a bank. But while polishing, he listens to their conversation carefully. He seems interested in learning from the white banker, writing everything he learns from them. One day, he listens to how white people handle business, and writes down everything in his diary. Then a policeman sees him. He ran away soon. At night, his father suggests not to do that again, as everyone thinks he is spying on white people. What he was doing there? He asked. Bernard replied, I was just learning how to make money like a white man. In that era, we see some racial discrimination between blacks and white. And mostly white people are the rich ones. After seeing his diary, his father appreciates his work but also warns him not to do that thing again. The scene shifts to 1954, in Los Angeles. Bernard goes to his uncle with his wife, Eunice. At dinner table, Bernard shares to invest and try to make a fortune from real estate. But his uncle told him rudely to do a job, like any other black man, because at that time, it was pretty hard to do business as a black person. Soon, the discussion heats up, and Bernard left the table. Next day, in the evening, he and his wife meet with Joe Morris and ask him to be his business partner. But after meeting with him, Bernard didn't like him. So, he quickly steps out of the building. The next day, he meets with Mr. Barker, one of the real estate owners, to buy his buildings. They both negotiate, but in the end, he didn't crack the deal. Then he goes to meet Mr. Reed, a banker, to get a loan. But due to discrimination by the assistant towards black people, he wasn't about to meet. He waits outside till Mr. Reed passes by. There, he interrupts and asks them to get a loan to buy Mr. Barker building. Same night, Bernard receives a call from Mr. Barker, informing him not to use his name again to get a loan. But, due to his behavior, Barker also informs him to meet Mr. Reed to sign off on that loan and next morning. That makes Bernard tearful, and he thanks him for that. At a party, Joe comes to meet Bernard, but, because of the last meeting, Bernard didn't like his presence near him. Joe asks him to take a walk outside together, to which he agrees. Joe told him that he likes to see black men succeed, so he loves to invest in them. Next day, Bernard doing some renovation at his new apartment. Then a white old lady passes nearby. After seeing black one in the white community, she feels uncomfortable and calls the police. Police inform them that the old lady doesn't like them working in a white community. But, Bernard says he owns the building, on which both policemen laugh. After seeing the paper, they left, but warns him to be respectful towards white people. We can see some racial discrimination here. At night, Bernard comes back to the building. Seeing him, the old lady doesn't like that. The next day, the old lady moves to somewhere else. She is replaced by another black lady. After leasing out every apartment in the building, he pays back everything he owns to Mr. Barker. He was impressed, and asked him to do a partnership with him. From the behavior of Barker, we can see, he is not racist as others are. He just loves making money, no matter what color of people he is working with. We can also see, that white people also don't like to sell their properties to black people. So, to keep that in mind, he offers Bernard to do the mental work, whereas he will be the face to sign the deal as a white person. Bernard agrees with this. Everything goes smoothly, and quickly both of them buy dozens of properties together, and make a filthy amount of money. A few months later, he gifts a mansion to her wife. Everything was right, but then, a few days later, Mrs. Barker found his husband dead in bed. So, next day, Mrs. Barker with her lawyer, threatens Bernard to sell all the properties her husband owns, and gives her a share. Otherwise she will sue him. Bernard head to see Mr. Reed, for a loan. But Reed disagrees to meet him. Feeling angry, outside, he thought to take revenge. And decides to buy the whole building one day. With these ambitions, he heads to Joe, and asks for his help to buy the building. Hearing this, Joe got shocked and mentions that in downtown, LA, no black man owns any kind of building. Fascinating, Joe agrees to be his partner on this and be the first to buy a building in downtown. But there is a problem, they both are black, and white people don't like to sell their buildings to black people as we know. So, they need a white face to make a deal for them. After Mr. Barker's death, they decided to go with his cousin's friend, Matt Steiner. He is just a worker, and doesn't know anything about their profession. So, they must have to teach them before cracking deals. His teaching begins. Starting with golf, that's what every rich do basically. Then basic mathematics. He keeps improving over time. After a month, he performs well in golf, and mathematics as well. Then, he also learned about the luxury lifestyle, like behaving while eating, drinking, dressing, etc. things. Few days of training, he is ready. After months of planning, they plan to set a meeting of Steiner, with Charlie who owns the Banker building, at Country Club. The first meeting goes smoothly as planned. The following day, he goes to Banker building to meet Charlie again. The meeting starts with lunch. Steiner goes very smoothly on numbers, by remembering every possible way of numbers, and he is successfully able to impress Charlie. But Charlie keeps pushing him, and in the end, the deal closed on $1.5 million. They celebrate at night, and try to push themselves to buy white community buildings, with the face of Matt. Expanding their empire quickly, and becoming one of the biggest investors in real estate in LA, owning more than 170 total buildings, including the famous Banker building. 9 years pass. Bernard goes to Texas to visit his uncle again, who, this time proudly welcomes him. The next day, he and his son, take a walk in the neighborhood, and notice that nothing has changed there. He reaches the place where the movie begins. Bernard used to polish shoes just to grab knowledge from white bankers. He remembers those days. The following day, he goes back to Joe and suggests he buy a bank, in his hometown. First, he disagrees, but on forcing by Bernard, he agrees to give it a try. Again, they keep Matt Steiner as the face to crack the deal. In this meeting, the owner asks about the financial partners, Bernard and Joe, which uncomforts Steiner. But he handles the situation, telling him, they are busy, and buys the Maryland Bank. After this, they promote black people to get loans from their bank, so that the black community in Texas spread without any concern. In just the first month, they pass 19 loans, and most of them are direct to black people, which comes in the eyes of the U.S. Treasury Department. Now, the former owner suspects Matt of hiding something, so he starts spying on him. Following him, he sees him with Bernard. And the next day, he reaches their house, threatens them with fraud, and told them about the loans they pass in just 1 month. Showing them a letter from U.S. Treasury Department, regarding unsafe loans, and they are coming for an inspection. After he left, Steiner suggests they buy Marlin Bank, which was also on the edge of going bankrupt. This idea didn't seem good to them, but after convincing by Matt, they agree, and make Matt the owner of the bank. In fear of inspection, Matt passed some loans from Maryland Bank from Marlin Bank, to bypass the inspection. Things seem good, but rumors spread around the white community about black people owning their banks. 5 of them withdrew their money, and in just 1 day. On the day of the inspection, Bernard starts working as a janitor. To help Matt, inspector arrives, and checks the loans they passed. He finds some critical faults in the loans, and asks him to sell off the loan immediately. It seems Steiner loses his chances of owning the bank. The next day, Joe received a call from his banker, informing him that Matt pays from Mainland Bank to save Marlin Bank. They rush towards Matt, to ask about everything that happened. As they check records, officers come from U.S. Treasury Department to revoke the Mainland Bank's license. Outside, the FBI arrests Joe and Bernard. Simultaneously, Senator McClellan tried to convenience Steiner to put all the blame on Joe and Bernard, and he will be free, and they committed a crime, to give loans only to black people. If he didn't do as Senator said, he will face a sentence of 50 years. Matt worried overnight, and couldn't sleep. The next day in court, Bernard says everything that he has in his heart for years, about the country's racist discrimination towards black people. After this kind of behavior in court, Senator McClellan gives him 3 years of jail, and orders to seize every property and asset they owned, which is 177 buildings. 3 years later, they are free now, and Eunice comes to take them home. They laugh and Eunice shockingly asks them what they laugh about. The government had seized everything, and then they reveal their secret of owning properties in the Bahamas. Then, it reveals that the night before the court date, Matt calls Bernard, and told everything about Senator, and the offer he made to Matt. There they secretly sell some of their assets, before the government seizes them, and Matt buys property for them in the Bahamas. Now they lived happily in the Bahamas, before moving back to the US, to build their empire again. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you liked the recap. Please consider like and subscribing our channel for future updates.